Hey, before we get into this, I just want to be really pathetic. Sub to this channel and like this video, and I'll keep finding people to roast. Thank you all so much. We've almost hit 200 subs, and you guys are awesome. Share my videos, and Anthony will probably do that thing that you like.
No, I won't.
Hey everyone, this is a video about a topic that I've touched on many times, but this is a video that I hope will be the definitive video about why women should not be allowed to vote.
And right off the bat, we're met with some overwhelmingly stupid shit. Why do these channels exist? Why do I do this to myself? Why do so many people agree with this insanity?
Now I ask that you carefully and objectively listen to my reasons and let them roll around in your mind before you simply thumb down the video and call me a bigot.
I'm gonna stop you right there, guy. In the beginning of this country, only white men who own land were allowed to vote. Let's modernize this idea and extend it to all sexes and races. And for the sake of this argument, I'm going to say that I own land and you do not. In the same respect, what would give you the right to vote on the taxation of my land and my business if you had neither? Would you not feel that your own rights were being infringed upon? Would it not be unfair that I can choose how to tax the unwealthy and vote against the taxes coming down on myself? What if it had nothing to do with land, but instead social status, and only married men and women were allowed to vote? You being a MGTOW defender would have a massive issue with this. And frankly, I would as well. I'm not married, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But I have owned a business. I'm working on becoming a cop. I give back to my society and my community. There should be no reason whatsoever that my right to vote should be taken away. I have never once been a debt to my society. I have never once been on welfare. I have never committed any felonies. Yes, America definitely has its issues, but I'm damn proud to be an American citizen. I will die for my right to vote and to be a full member of the country that I live in, the country that I stand for. I love my country, and I love the rights that I have here, and that everyone for the most part is treated as an equal member of society. Yeah, we have our issues, but I'm an American and I'm proud.
America! Fuck yeah! Freedom is the only way.
Now with that being said, let's petition to send this guy to Saudi Arabia so we don't have to listen to him bitch anymore.
Now, after watching the video, after considering my arguments, if you choose simply to dismiss them as the ravings of a bigoted puppet, that's fine. I understand that. You're just an idiot.
Oh baby, it's definitely not me, it's you.
So in a very early video of mine, I talked about how women caused the welfare state, and that was incorrect. I was set straight by a few of my subscribers, but I want to fine-tune the concept that women's suffrage absolutely grows the welfare state.
I wouldn't actually call this a fact. So according to the US Census Bureau, only 21.3% of people participate in welfare each month. Head of households which are female accounted for 50% of people who use welfare. But interestingly enough, education levels play a huge role on who uses welfare, with non-high school graduates being the highest. Minorities also have the highest percentage of participation in government assistance programs. They account for 95.8% of welfare users. However, to say that minorities' right to vote should be taken away because they use the majority of welfare programs is completely disgusting and regressive. And I hope that the overwhelming majority on YouTube would completely shut you down. A lot like they shut me down every time I talk about being against feminism, or inquisition, or pedo furries, or MGTOW weirdos, or weird bearded guys, or bitches, or really everything I do. Why am I even on YouTube again?
So let's start with one called the enfranchisement of women in the welfare state. It says, quote, women display a higher preference for public goods, which may reflect different degrees of risk aversion and different perceptions of the role of government as a potential insurer. Gender differences in the taste for public goods has been documented in several contexts. Family structure can be an explanation for this pattern, so that institutions affecting the stability of family structure, such as divorce, can be related to women's preferences, unquote.
So going back to the US Census, what about the other 50% of male-headed households that are on welfare? Also, as far as the study that you're quoting, this study in particular has to do with Italian welfare stats, which I'm honestly not incredibly proficient in, and I imagine you're not either. I haven't lived there since I was like 5, give me a break. The study is also incredibly pro-Catholic and studies the differences economically between married Catholic women and non-Catholic heathens. Graziella Bertocci works for Catholic universities, which needs to be taken into account when reading these studies. With that being said, what the current state of affairs is for the Italian population is not always applicable to the American ones and vice versa. We have 325.7 million people to their 60 million. They have far more social programs than we do in the US, and 87.8% of Italian people are Catholic, and therefore the Catholic women that she uses in her studies are the greater majority in Italy.
It makes intuitive sense that women desire to be protected and provided for. In fact, when you look at voting patterns, single women overwhelmingly vote for Democrats in the US.
Alright, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a break because this video was made in 2015. However, according to the exact same place, the Pew Research Center, looking at the other factors which divide voting tendencies, such as religious affiliation, race, economic status, and education levels, only then can you get a larger picture of how people vote. Now that number has gone up to 56% versus 44%. And if your weird little dream world came true, we're banning 72 million women from agreeing with your dumbass. And if we redacted women's rights, when would your rights be redacted? When can we take away your right to vote simply because somebody else doesn't agree with the way you vote?
All women, 100% of women, are voting based on who provides for them. The single women are voting for the Democrats because the Democrats are giving them welfare benefits. They are providing for these women directly.
There's so much more to do than just with welfare. Again, welfare is only being used by 21.3% of people. Not all women are on welfare, not even close. I'm 26 and I've never been on welfare in my entire life. What you're failing to look at is policy. Lest we forget, it's typically the left that supports the right to choose, the left that supports gay rights, and frankly, Democrats hold a substantial advantage when it comes to unmarried single voters. The religious narrative pushed by the right is also a huge turnoff for a lot of millennial age voters, the ones who are more likely to remain unmarried. Granted, I don't really like either party, but for fuck's sakes, how are you drawing like this massive conclusion from only one chart? How's anybody buying your bullshit right now?
In both cases, these women are expecting to be provided for by someone, either the government directly or their husbands.
Wrong.
That is absolutely
Wrong.
proved over and over again.
Wrong.
So, get this! Only 6% of welfare recipients even vote in the first place. God.
Anyway, moving on to another study called Did Women's Suffrage Change the Size and Scope of Government? It says, quote, giving women the right to vote significantly changed American politics from the very beginning. Suffrage coincided with immediate increases in state government expenditures and revenue, and these effects continued growing as more women took advantage of the franchise. Similar changes occurred at the federal level, as female suffrage led to more liberal voting records for the state's U.S. House and Senate delegations. In the Senate, suffrage changed voting behavior by the amount equal to almost 20% of the difference between Republican and Democrat senators. Suffrage also coincided with changes in the probability that prohibition would be enacted and changes in divorce laws, unquote.
Alright, Turd Flinging Monkey. I found this study as well. And if you scroll past the scary charts, which you didn't, you just went straight to the conclusion and called it a day without reading the entire conclusion, it explains all the reasoning for that in the very next sentence. Not all women immediately took advantage of the right to vote. About half of the ultimate percentage of women who eventually voted in elections appeared to have started voting immediately after suffrage was granted. It goes on to explain in the appendix that a 25-year-old woman who has time to see the effects of political decisions is going to be more informed and more likely to vote, over a 50-year-old woman who was just given the right to vote, who doesn't hold much political capital, and may not even find it worthwhile to vote at all. Susan B. Anthony and her followers were extremely liberal, and even considered radical at the time. So with that being the case, the women who immediately took advantage of their right to vote were definitely on the liberal side. Whereas the more traditional women that were in like more religious households wouldn't have gone out and voted. Now he goes on to misquote a few more studies, and most of these are about voting patterns between 1830 and 1930. And for those of you who are not super informed on American history. Women got the right to vote here in 1920. So he's studying that 10-year period immediately when women were granted the right to vote. He also has one Swiss study in there as well. But again, the point I just made explains all of that. And I'll spare you guys the pain of making you listen to me over and over again.
In summary, when women were given the right to vote, they overwhelmingly sided with socialists and those who wanted to enact a welfare state. This is precisely why the progressive movement of the early 1900s in the US made giving women the right to vote primary on their agenda. They needed women's votes in order to get the rest of their agenda passed, because women are a natural constituency for those who want to grow the size and scope of government, because they want to be protected and provided for. And in the absence of a husband, they look to the government to fill that role.
You're not taking into account any modern data, you blithering moron. Back then, traditional right-wing women would not have voted. But speed that up to where we are now, and it's not unseen or unheard of to see women vote. And you're trying to alienate 72 million female Republican voters because of trends that happened between 1920 and 1930. Times change, and for fuck's sake, you can't stop somebody from voting because you disagree with how they vote. Nor base an entire premise for taking away 50% of the population's right to vote based on studies on voting patterns from 100 years ago, you absolute ape. See what I did there? Because he's a monkey. Not allowing American citizens to vote is fascist and completely un-American.
So if you favor small government, if you favor limited government, if you favor human freedom, women should not be given the right to vote.
If you disagree with anybody that votes differently, then you just kill them. It's way easier that way, and then you'll always get what you want. Is anyone else shocked that this is a MGTOW channel? No, but really, can we petition to get him out of here? Come on, Canada, you know you want the cute little fascist monkey puppet with a list harder than mine. Just take him, please God, he won't shut up!
Jesus Christ.
Sub to this channel. I'm so alone.